Hey guys, it's Andrea. This is one of the pecan trees. Of course, these were here when we moved here. This is the biggest one, I think. This is also another pecan tree. They're planted pretty close together. Then I have two more pecan trees over here. So those two that I just showed you always produce pecans. This one over here is the smallest one. Maybe it was planted the latest, and it doesn't usually produce pecans. So I'm going to show you that one. So this is the smallest one. And then over here, this one right there, that's another really big pecan tree. So we have 4 pecan trees, and I found out something about pecan trees a couple of years ago that I did not know, and that is that they actually need a pollinator. So most pecan trees actually have to have a pollinator to be able to produce pecans. And so in the spring, when they get those little pollen things that are hanging down, they have to be pollinated by another pecan tree. And so if you don't have a pollinator for your pecan tree, then you will not get any pecans. I didn't know that for years. The first house that I lived in, we planted a pecan tree, but we only planted one. And I didn't know that I needed a pollinator. And the second house that we lived in, we had 2 very large pecan trees, and one of them did not produce any pecans, and the other one did produce a pretty good bit of pecans. And then at our third place, we had lots of pecan trees, but they don't really produce barely any pecans. This house, these produce a lot of pecans every year. There's multiple different varieties of pecan trees, and so some of them only produce every 3 years, and some of them also will do a heavy crop one year and then a light crop for the next year or maybe 2 years, and then it would have a heavy crop again. So for these, I found out that they do a heavy crop one year, and then the next year they'll do a light crop. And then the following year, the third year, they do another big heavy crop. So there's lots of different things to consider when you're trying to plant pecan trees, and I have to have my pecan trees. We love pecans, and they are a beautiful tree, and they produce a lot of pecans, and they're also a fairly easy tree as far as climate and what they need to grow. They can grow pretty much mostly anywhere in the South is usually where pecan trees grow a lot. And so if you were looking into getting pecan trees, I would research varieties first and see what pollinator, if they can pollinate with themselves, like the same variety of tree, or do they need a different variety to pollinate them, because you will have better results and you will have better yields of pecans if you have the correct pollinator for the tree that you have. And then you will know what to expect as far as how much it will produce and when it will produce that crop. So pecans produce their crop. I mean, they do their pollen in the spring and early summer, and then they grow throughout the summer, and in the fall is when their fruit becomes ripe and the pecans drop to the ground. And so we come out in the fall almost every single day and pick up the pecans, because if we didn't, other animals love pecans also, and they would come up and take our pecans. So we come out every single day and pick up what has fallen, and it lasts at least a few weeks where pecans are ripening and falling to the ground. And so you just have to be on top of going out there and picking them, and then that way you get a full harvest off of your pecan tree. So those are a few things that I didn't know when I started growing pecan trees, but now after being at different places and having different problems with pecan trees and researching why is my pecan tree not producing, that is how I have figured out. I mean, I'm not a professional on pecans, but I did research and find out that different varieties have different production times, but the main thing that I found out that I didn't know that has helped me tremendously is that they need a pollinator. I originally did not know that pecan trees needed a pollinator to be able to produce their pecans and produce a lot. So hopefully that will help somebody when they're looking at pecan trees, or if you have pecan trees and you have a problem, maybe you can figure out what pecan tree, like I don't know what variety these are, so if I had to pick a pollinator, if these were all the same tree, I would try to find a pollinator that works with most varieties of pecan trees, and I would plant that so that the pecan trees that you have would start producing nuts because they would get their pollination. So I hope that helps some of you guys when it comes to knowing a little bit more about pecan trees and how they work a little bit, so that, because that was the main problem for me, is if they're not producing nuts, what do you do? Does that mean there's something wrong with your tree? And most of the time, no. That just means probably more than likely it needs a pollinator. So I'll talk to you guys next time.